All right. It says we're live and recording, so I guess we're live and recording. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first workshop of the Polkadot Hackathon. Today we have with us, I think predominantly Sasha and Jimmy will be speaking, but I still want to say hello to our friend Justin. So if any questions arise and anything pops up, please talk to Justin. He's going to be able to help you out. But to the speakers, Sasha today is going to take us through the substrate documentation. We have just revamped, actually revitalized, relaunched the substrate basically developer hub. It is currently not located under substrate.dev, but .io. It's a new site. It's got a lot of information. Sasha is going to take you through that piece. Also, just generally what is important to look at, what you should be taking into account for, and so on. As well as he's going to touch on the Docathon portion of the hackathon, because he's probably the best positioned person to actually give any advice on this. So I'm very, very excited for what you've got in the books for us today. Second, Jimmy is still joining us. He's still connecting, but Jimmy is going to be talking about essentially Substrate 101, how to get started, how to launch your first very, let's say, plain vanilla Substrate blockchain. So without further ado, Sasha, the floor is yours.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm just gonna share my screen, jump right into it. Also, just say a few words that it's been really exciting to when I was in the Hackerspace the other day, with just hearing all your ideas and it's super fun. I hope you guys are having fun. I hope that you guys are making the best of your resources. And part of this session, for me, this portion of the session is kind of to make sure that you know what those resources are on the one hand, but also for those that are doing the Docathon track, that sort of what could be expected from you specifically with contributing there. So I'm sharing my full screen here because I have a couple links. I can't see the chat, so once I'm done this presentation, I will check. But if there's any question that comes up, feel free to interrupt me via Erwin. Just raise a hand. So I'm looking at the watch here. I don't have much time, so I'm going to try to just plow through this thing. So I want to talk about how to navigate the docs. I want to talk about and show you live. And then I want to go into what resources are available, right? There's a ton of resources that are at your disposal. And, we want to really encourage you in your learning and in how you're engaging with this new material to really dig yourself before you come to something like the Substrate technical chat with questions and stuff. And then finally, I'm going to go over specifically what is a how-to guide and what is a tutorial, and show the sort of layout of a how-to guide, because I think it'll help those of you that are interested in the docs track to really just be confident and just say, yep, that's what I want to do, and do something really killer. So overview of our developer hub. In a nutshell, our developer hub is following a model laid by a Divio documentation system, it's called, where really we've got 4 main areas. So we've got reference material, that's our docs. We've got how-to guides, that's very specific, tailored to very use case driven and goal oriented guides to do something. So typically catered to people that are already developing with Substrate, right? And then we've got tutorials, right? Tutorials really are this kind of onboarding mechanism for folks that are learning how to do a specific thing, but really tutorials are geared to being comprehensive, right? More comprehensive than a how-to guide, for example. And at the bottom of this, you could say the pillar of this thing is the Rust docs. The Rust docs is the source code. As you know, Cargo has this great capability, which we can automatically generate documentation out from Rust code. And we are really lucky because our engineers do a really good job documenting. Well, I like to say it that way, but the reality is Rust makes it difficult not to document code, and i.e. encouraging developers to really document. So luckily enough, we can really make use of this resource. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you sort of what our docs website looks like now. So if you go to docs.substrate.io, you'll see that it brings you directly to our developer hub. So these are the items that I described. And the Rust docs actually lives in this area, right? So because it's kind of separate, right? It does live more on the source code side, our developer hub is kind of more of an interface for people that are learning about Substrate to kind of get more familiar with what's going on, right? What are these traits? How can I use them? What is the configuration trait of my palette? And then once you kind of breach that, then you're probably going to want to, just have the Rust docs of Substrate source code open in your browser, in your VS Code window to sort of help you accompany you learn. So if I go here, I'm pointed to the latest master of our Rust docs. So back to our developer hub, we have our documentation here, right? So the way that things are organized today will probably change. We don't know, right? But for now, we know that with the tools that we're building, we have like basic kind of like onboarding things, and that lives in this getting started section. And then we have, with these what I like to call these key concepts, right? What is the runtime? Runtime is a familiar term in programming. However, in Substrate, it means something very different. What's an extrinsic? Same thing. The weight system, right? These are what I call like key concepts. And then runtime development kind of going more into the capabilities that we can leverage with Substrate. So then going into the tutorial section. So tutorials, we've got a bunch of good tutorials. Really more. The thing is, currently these tutorials, they're kind of more catered to beginners, like really people that are beginning, trying to get started with Substrate. And I think they do a really good job at getting them excited to get started, depending on what you want to do. Like typically you'd start with create your first chain, and maybe like, oh, proof of existence is pretty exciting. And then you move on to maybe something a little more intermediate, which is this kiddies workshop, where it's way more comprehensive, right? Like you're building the entire chain from scratch. You're building the entire palette, and then you're also building the front end for it. However, if this is any hint to those that want to do the Docathon track, one of my critics to myself and to like what we have currently is that we're not very catered to other levels or more specific audiences of our developer hub. There's some great things here on Cumulus. I think that does a good job. Frontier 2, that is maintained by the Inc. people. But overall, I would criticize this, that it doesn't give enough variety of audience-specific tutorials. And now our how-to guides. So our how-to guides are really more of a sort of pieces of info or bite-sized guides for people that are building with Substrate and are looking for specific solutions to their specific problems. So for example, we want to learn how to do a storage migration. So a basic storage migration really can be summed up into these 6 steps. And that's what this is trying to accomplish. It's trying to just stay focused on answering that goal and providing the steps to do that. So that typically you would have teams that could use this guide that are doing something completely different from another team that would also make use of this guide. But again, like a lot of these guides are primarily catered to people that are starting to learn about Substrate and starting to maybe build their own solutions, but maybe less leaning to more advanced users, right? And I'll go into sort of the Docathon specific stuff, but again, I'm hinting towards maybe what would be lacking. But there's great stuff here, right? So implement a lockable currency. That's basically the steps to use this lockable trait. I actually talked about this on the seminar last, and I'm sure some of you saw, but very specific. We're using this trait, we're using the functions that it exposes, and that's it, right? It doesn't do anything fun like a tutorial where at the end you have like a chain that's working. It's really meant to be used as like a modular unit to help people build stuff. Again, use a struct in storage. That's a very common question that we get for people beginning with Substrate. I think you get the point. I hope you get the point of that this how things are structured now. And I will say a word on the categories, right? So basics kind of just touches on patterns that you will reuse. You'll have to reuse how to integrate a palette to your runtime. And especially when you're beginning, it's not very familiar. You'll have to sort of get familiar with using helper functions. And then we kind of go more into palette design where we're leveraging frame to do specific things. tight coupling, right? That's a very fundamental concept. This gives an example of how to implement it. Weights, same thing. That's a specific kind of area of development, and then so on. We've got testing, storage migrations, consensus, and then we've got this section on parachain, which is very much work in progress. So yeah, that covers that. I'm going to go back to my slides. So what resources do you have? The resources, if you're learning Substrate, you're starting, you want to build things, and even like no matter what level, all of this applies. All of these resources apply. You start with the Substrate technical chat. That's a great place to go and ask questions that are specific. I really want to emphasize that, right? So I'm sure anyone can easily understand it's not fair to just paste the entire error that you're getting and say, why isn't this working? Like, we get that a lot, right? Where people don't really make an effort to try to understand why something's not working themselves first before just pasting their error. Typically, it would probably be more productive if you yourselves tried before you ask something in the Substrate technical chat, because the people that are trying to help in the Substrate technical chat do a lot better of a job in answering questions if they're specific, right? We have our channels with this hackathon, right? So Discord and the Hackerspace. The Hackerspace is a great place to kind of connect one-on-one. I highly recommend that you book time when they are available. Justin's doing a great job, making that known and like offered for you guys. Then I put forums here because we have Stack Overflow. Like, if I go to the Stack Overflow right now and show you guys, there's probably questions that you've asked yourself that exist here, and they're answered, right? So I would check there if you have a specific question check that it doesn't already exist. But on the other hand, it's a great place to learn too, right? And there's some great answers. There's people that are active there answering questions. I highly recommend that you check out the Stack Overflow. I want to talk a bit about this Stack Exchange. So this is a new resource that we're trying to kind of get off the ground. And I will first give a little bit of background as to why, and then kind of what this is. So the problem we're seeing with a lot of people asking questions in the technical chat is that some questions just get missed. Some questions are kind of partially answered, and then they just get buried into all of the other questions that are coming in. Like, we have a big community, so sometimes it's not the most effective place. The Stack Exchange will provide more of a forum type place to ask questions and get them answered and really track them. So what we're trying to do now, and what I actually want to ask you guys today, is ask some questions here. The reason is because to secure a spot on this Stack Exchange hosted site, we need like a minimum of, I don't know, we need like another 50 questions or something like that. Sean actually just launched this a couple days ago, and it would be really cool to sort of have you guys put questions in. You can see a lot of people that are like parody people when they are asking questions. So why? Well, because then like later we can benefit, like the community and yourselves, like going into December, can benefit from using this resource. Seminar. I highly recommend that you guys check out all of the go through seminars, and you'll probably find a seminar that touches on something you might be interested in doing, or something that you're already trying to solve, right? Typically you find that like problems, like developers trying to solve specific problems, are very horizontally scalable. Depending on use cases, they need to be tweaked. However, getting inspiration from something that's already been done goes a long way. So I have all these links here that I'm going to post in the chat right now, because I think it'll help you guys, and you will be able to. Okay, this is a big chunk, but I'm just gonna. Oh, my message is too long. It says I'll do it later, but there's some great resources for Substrate Technical. I'll delete the seminar one. I'll put these ones only. There you go. So Awesome Substrate is not on my slide, but it's also a great resource. The last thing I wanted to recommend is something I talked about on seminar this week, which is once you've kind of gotten familiar with the motions of, like browsing through the Rust docs and like kind of, implementing functions in your palette, the source code is the best place to like learn how to do something specific or learn how something has been done, or just at least kind of get familiar with like these patterns that you learn in the how-to guides. You also learn in the tutorials, but these patterns exist in the source code, right? Like if you go to the frame folder in the Substrate repo, and you also see how things are done in the Polkadot repo, you will learn a lot. And I'd highly recommend that. So about the Docathon track, so there's two kind of options, and I don't know on the specifics of submissions and stuff like that, but I know. So what I'm trying to communicate here is this is like I want to go over like what I think would make great tutorials and great how-to guides. So let's just talk about tutorials really quickly and try to contrast what a tutorial is and what a tutorial is not, and what then a how-to guide is and what a how-to guide is not. So a tutorial is really something where you want the person doing the tutorial to be rewarded, and to be rewarded in the sense that like you want them to feel confident. You want to build and inspire confidence in the person doing the tutorial. Why is that? Well, because someone doing a tutorial typically is just trying to get started or learn about a specific topic. The thing is, it doesn't need to be beginners, right? It could also be, say, like someone wanting to bring a parachain into production and learn about all the different patterns for making sure that their parachain is production ready, maybe using a bunch of tools, and it's really focused more on that kind of audience. A tutorial could also be just how to build with Polkadot.js apps, Polkadot.js API, or it could be catered to I don't know, like benchmarking, right? And really like stress testing your chain. So it needs to be a win for the learner. That's really important. When you're writing a tutorial, you don't want to kind of give too many options of, maybe you could, write this way, and maybe you can do it this way, and there's this third option also. It's good to like maybe to mention that there's other ways to do something, but it becomes distracting for someone who wants to have quick reward, quick sort of confidence while they're doing the tutorial, if there's too many options. So that's something I advise. Like if you're writing a tutorial, sort of make it easy, make it a really like you're hand holding the person through their learning experience. And of course, there's going to be many ways of doing something. Of course, well, if the person writing the tutorial is more knowledgeable, they'll feel that they're missing out on details. But in most cases, it's a distraction, and it doesn't really meet the goal of a tutorial, which is a confidence-inspiring mechanism for people that are learning something. Now let's talk a bit about how-to guides. How-to guides, well, they're not. It's hard to contrast the how-to guide and a tutorial sometimes, because with a how-to guide, you want to be specific and goal-oriented, but sometimes that might result in more of a tutorial-like end product. However, how-to guides need to be specific. They need to be almost. It's easier to think of them as different than tutorials if you think of them as they need to be kind of modular, right? They need to be reusable. Like a single how-to guide should be able to be taken from one context to another. And in most cases, your how-to guides are things that more advanced users would have, or at least people that they already know what they're doing, to then use that how-to guide in their context. So a how-to guide needs to have a very specific goal. Right? How do I do this? What is this guide accomplishing? And it needs to have an example, because it becomes providing the person reading your guide an example will give them more foundations, or at least knowledge, with regards to how can they use it for their use case. So you really have to think about, the utility of these two different resources. So I want to just touch on like the structure of a how-to guide. So the structure of a how-to guide can be found here, by the way. I'm going to just link it to you now. And in a nutshell, so the link that I gave you is like the template that we're basing our guides on. And there's something to be said that we are also iterating on our current content. So you might see some mismatch between what I'm showing you here and some of the guides that you will see in our docs currently. We're actually we're revising them, trying to meet this. So what's important for you guys is to follow this, right? Every guide needs to have a title that answers the question, how do I, right? The title has to be indicative of what this guide is. Most guides will have a before you begin section, because most of the times you at least need to specify that you're using, the node template, or that you at least need to have like a running blockchain and, we're doing a palette, or you need to have like an RPC enabled interface. It could be many things. But it's not always going to be necessary. But now the most important the two next parts are the most important parts: steps and examples. So for steps, every step heading, so the H2 tag for that step should be descriptive. And then under that tag, you will have numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4 to sort of achieve that thing. And then the pattern continues. New step, H2 tag, and then the numbered actual, like, this is what you do, this is what you paste in, or this is the type we're using. The last part is the example. So at minimum, one example. That's what we ask because, again, it's important to give context to how this guide can be used, and at least a practical example of this guide implemented. And then, as you can see in the link that I shared in the chat, there are two other sections that this slide is not showing, but that's use cases and related material. Personally, I love having the use cases section because it really does kind of help the person looking at the guide kind of wrap their minds around, okay, how can this be useful to me, right? Before they go and look at examples. So I personally think it's a powerful thing, but it's optional because a lot of the times, you might be writing guides that it's very obvious what the use is, and that's just described in the paragraph that follows the title. Okay, so I sped through with 3 minutes to spare, and I'm happy to take some questions. Maybe there's some in the Q&A. I'm gonna just check it out. One last resource actually that I put here is our newsletter. Our newsletter just gives us it's curated by me. It's just a bunch of PRs and interesting resources for those of you who are developing with Substrate to learn how you what the cutting edge stuff is, but also how things are done. I put a lot of examples of oh, look at this storage migration that was done by people at Parity. So this is newsletter. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and take some questions. 1 second.
Okay, I think
yeah, I think we lost the session. I think I clicked on the wrong thing. Let me
Sure. I think while we are getting Sasha back, just in case if there are any questions specifically to the Docathon track or documentation part of things, yes, he's back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is confusing. There's another, whatever. Yeah, I hit the wrong button, it seems like. So I'm looking at questions right now, and it doesn't seem like there is. Okay, so there's one question is which. Okay, Justin, you answered that question. Which URL can I upload? Do I use to upload the Docathon project?
Yep.
So it doesn't seem like there's any questions about what I just presented. Maybe I went too fast, but typically I take my time and I go over time. So this time around, I wanted to just make sure that we had enough for Q&A.
Yeah, you actually have put in some of the links for people to kind of explore. So during this session, I believe that some people may have kind of like went to check it out, and if they have any questions, I believe they will actually drop it down. So what you can do is also to help keep a lookout at the chat that's actually happening on the right side of the
For
screen,
sure.
or if not, they ask questions as well. Of course, maybe towards the end, if there are any more specific questions that is related to the documentation stuff or Docathon, I'll just direct it to you and probably have you just come up to kind of like address them as well.
For sure. Cool.
All right. Thank you so much, Sacha.
Yeah, I'll get off video and I'll be in the back. Cheers.
Sure. Thank you, Sacha. So right now, I'm just going to invite Jimmy, who will touch on the 101 for Substrate, and he will run through a demonstration as well to help you understand a little bit better on how you can start going on Substrate as well. So Jimmy, the stage is yours right now. Hello.
Hi. Hey.
All right, cool. So I'm going to pass the time to you, Jimmy. All the best.
I will share my whole screen. All right. Hello everyone. I'm Jimmy, and nice to meet you. I probably have talked to some of you already in the Discord channel. I'll be switching back and forth between my slide and actually some probably my editors, and actually I want to make that, yeah. So I'll switch between the slides and also some the code editors I'll be showing. Okay, so today I'm going to present half an hour, and I'm going to present two things. Hopefully, is not too complicated. It's just, so the first one is transferring balances. This is probably everyone would be doing this. Like if you are participating in the hacking, the building of blockchain tracks, probably you will have some functionalities about like transferring balances between two accounts. So I'll be presenting two ways of doing that, transferring balances. And then another thing that I want to present is about how to step-by-step debugging the Substrate. How do you step through your codes in Substrate? So this is like another questions that I often heard from the communities. So I want to present that to you. So first of all the code is already is actually here. So you could git clone and take a look at it yourself. And the code is actually based on Substrate Kitty's workshop. So just now, Sasha talked about there's intermediate workshops in the tutorial. That is, let's go through that. So if like I think this workshop is really a must for everyone, that if you want to go serious about developing on Substrate, this is a must for everyone to go through. It is a very comprehensive workshop, starting from how to build your own palette, having the back the Substrate side, and also having a front end. And then like this talk is just a continuation or building up on top of this Kitty's workshops. All right. So first of all, I already have my chain running at the back. it has been running for a while. As you can see, like this is like currently it's already on the block 466. And I have a very simple palette. It is just doing a transfer. The source code is like this. This is a simple transfer palette. As you can see, I'll make this. So it has the usual structure. There's a mod palettes, and then there's the palette config, which is have a trait bounds of frame system and palette balances here. And there's some event that it will emit an event called transfer, and there's an error called transfer error. And there is only one function, right? Only one x-string6 that's called transfer. Right? It takes 3 arguments. One is the origins, where it's coming from, the destination, the destination accounts that you want to transfer amount, and the actual amount, right? And all it does is it take it extract the accounts out from the origins, so you get a from, and then this is the code that we use to do a amount transfer. Like I'm using the palette transfer that I have in here. So the palette transfer, I'm using the palette there, and this is a type, and I'm like casting it using the trade currency, and then from the trade currency, I'm using the transfer function in the trade in the currency traits, and pass in the from, destination, amounts, and the 4th argument, which usually we will use the existence requirement keep alive. And we do a transfer with this line, and then I finally have a event emitted called if it is everything successful, it will emit the event transfer. And you see a question mark here. The question mark is actually so this line is returning a result, right? A result type. So the result, it could be either an OK OK variant or an error. So the question mark is actually like unwrap that, and if it is an error, it will immediately return the error. If it is an OK, it will extract the value out from the OK enum. And finally, it deposited in van and return OK. So I have already run this, and I also have the Polkadot JS app on it, and I'll just demonstrate what it does. So there's a simple transfer, right? There's only one single extrinsic transfer, like as you see in the source code, and you can specify who to do transfer, Bob, and then I can type in some amount, and we sign and submit. And it is, you see that simple transfer event is emitted, right? Very this is probably one of the simplest palette that you can see here. So this is one way of doing balance transfer here. So this is what I have. Do I have that? Okay, so basically this is the simple transfer, and then you see that the config is trait bound by the palette balance. I probably have to do this. So we have this, the config trait bound by the frame. We always have to do that with the frame system, and then we also, in addition to the frame system, we also have it trait bound with the palette balances. And finally, we just use palette balances, palette as currency, like this type is a trait, and then call the function of the trait to do the transfer. So this is the simple way of doing transfer. All right, and then we also see that in the kitties. If you have gone through the kitties, or otherwise, I will just give a foretaste. Is that you can create the kitties in the kitty tutorial, and then afterwards you can set a price to the kitties, and someone could buy the kitties from you. And you can imagine that when you do a buy the kitties is transferred from the seller to you, and then you are transferring some token from your account to the seller account. So there's a two-way, like two items are being transferred. One is the kitties from the seller to you, and then another is your tokens or your balance from you to the seller, right? So let's see how we are doing that in the palette kitties. Here is the kitty source code, right? I am looking at the buy kitties. You know what? How about let me try to demonstrate what's it in. Here. All right. So we have a kitties. This is the kitties that you guys would have if you follow through the kitties workshop. So I highly recommend people to follow through it. You can first create a kitties. All right, we have a kitties. If we look at inspect the chain state, take a look at the kitty. If we don't include the options, it will iterate through the kitties and its attributes. So this is the kitty ID, and this is the kitty's attribute. Like it has DNA and owned by. This is the Alice account. All right, we need this ID, and Alice is going to set a price for these kitties. She is going to set a price, set price. We are passing the kitty ID, and we are giving it a price. So by giving a price to the kitties, it's also marking that the kitties is sellable. Like Alice is willing to sell the kitties. So anyone that is willing to pay for that price, they can buy the kitty from Alice. So now I'm going to use another account, Bob, and he is going to call the buy kitties extrinsics, and then pass in the kitties ID that I have just copied, and submit transactions. The buy kitties. So the extrinsic is succeed, and you see that kitty bought event is emitted. All right. So the buy kitties function is actually running the logic in here. So it is in the palette kitty source that buy kitties. Let's have a brief look at what is going on here. We get a buyer from origin. This is the Bob in our case, and then we first of all check that if the kitties ID that we enter is actually a valid kitties, because it could be like some just random string, right? So we first of all we try to fetch the kitties if that kitties actually exists. If not, we return error, like these are all error, right? And then we ensure that the kitties owner is not a buyer. That means that he's not buying his own kitties. If he's like trying to buy his own kitties, we also return an error saying that the buyer is kitty owner already, right? And then we also check that if the kitties already has a ask price, has a kitty price set. Just now I said, because by default, when we just create a kitties, the price is set to null, which means that the kitty is not for sale. So if just now we do a set price, so that we are setting the kitty price here, and then we check if the kitty's price is set. If it is set, it means that it is for sales, and then we retrieve the price. Okay, so this is another check. So fine, then we do another check again. Here we check that the buyer, like in our case, is Bob, right? The Bob has a free balance that is greater than the ask price. Like basically, as I see, does he has enough money to purchase the kitty? If he doesn't, then we return an error of not enough balance, right? So this is also a pattern that I want to introduce is we do all the check first. We check for all the conditions. If some of these required conditions do not satisfy, we return the error first. We return the error immediately. And then after we've done all the check, then we finally actually change the state of the chain, right? So this is the pattern we always want to follow. We perform all the check at the beginning first. And once we have passed through all the check, and then we change, we update the state of the chain. And actually, this is one more check here, right? We check that the buyer has not reached the max kitty has not reached the max kitty number that he could own. So we have this parameter in this palette saying that someone could only hold a max amount of kitties. Like it could be, I think it is 100 or 1,000, something like that. But we have this parameter. Someone can only own a max number of kitties. We check that it hasn't reached that limit yet. Okay, so finally, we have the kitties owner. So this is the line that is actually, so that, like I mentioned, there are two transfers here. One is transferring the kitties. It is done in these functions that I'm not going to go into. But this is the line that I want to, we want to take a deeper look here. This is another way of doing balance transfer. You see that is T : currency : transfer. And then the buyer seller, like the from, the to is from the buyer to the seller. And this is a token amount, right? And you can see that the way of calling this is quite different than the way of calling this. This is, you are specifying the palette balance directly here. And then here, you are like calling some kind of currency, T currency. So let's decipher what is this line doing here. Okay. So this is pretty much what we have gone through, a flexible way of like doing balance transfer. All right. So T is our runtime config, our trait. So we are looking at this, like when we are saying T : currency, we are looking at our trait config. Oops. Here. We are actually looking, we are like calling like this associated type. And this associated type is trait bound by this currency, right? So what is this currency, right? So we will ask. Let's take a look at and again, like as Sasha mentioned, that the RustDoc API is our friends, right? So I already have it open here. If we search for currency here, we would see, oh, it take a while. Okay. It's probably I'm doing the screencasting at the same time, so it takes a while to, wow. Okay, so okay, finally, it is showing up. So it should be a lot faster in your machine when you are not doing screencasting with Crowdcast. Okay, so the trait, right? We are saying in here, we are saying that it is trait bound by currency. So what is this currency trait? It is this one, or this one actually. This is a currency with a capital C, right? With this currency trait, we see that it has this transfer function. So it has a bunch of functions, right? Total balance, like you can check how much money or how much balance a user has. But what eventually we want to do is doing this, and there's a free balance here as well. Like from the code, you see that we do. Oops, hold on. Let me do a bookmark here. All right, and we have a bookmark here. You see that I actually call a free balance here, right? So we are checking how much free balance a user has, and then if he has a free balance that's greater than the ask price. So I'm leveraging this function here. So this is the transfer function we want. So we see that if a certain type has implemented this trait, then that type will provide this transfer function. Like this is what bound by the trait means, right? So what we want is we want to call this transfer function so that it transfers. Okay. But all we have defined here is just saying that, okay, this trait, we have an associated type currency. And this currency has a trait bound by this currency trait. All right. And this currency trait will have this transfer function, right? But we haven't defined. So where is the implementation? Where is this actual, like, how is the logic actually implemented, right? So now that's why we have to go back to the runtime. Right? This is a palette. And we will go back to the runtime. The runtime is actually, so if you are using a node template, if you are using a node template, you will have a node, a palettes having all your palettes stored here. And then you have the runtime. Runtime is where you would implement, like where you would include different palettes so that a runtime would contain different palettes, right? And then you can also configure how this palette would look like in the runtime. So you would see that we have, so you see that we implement palette, we implement a bunch of palette here, right? Implement palette random collective, don't worry about it first, but we want to look at, we implement the palette kitties here. So we implement the palette kitties config. So to include a palette inside the runtime, we have to do two things. One is implement that palette config. So it's one part is here. And another part is to, inside the construct runtime, we also have something like this line. So we define palettes and assign a name to that. So this kitties with a capital K is a name for this palette kitties, for this palette, right? So we see that the palette kitties has these 4 associated type we need to specify: event, currency, max kitty own, kitty randomness. And we will see that they are specified here: event, currency, kitty's randomness, max kitty owner. So just now I said that we have a parameter of max kitty owner, so the users could only own the max amount of kitties, and that amount is actually 9999. So in here we specify the actual number here in the runtime. So now let's go back to the currency. So because this is where we have the balance transferring function implement, right? So we see that the currency associated type is assigned to balances. Okay, so this like just back for another question is, what is this balances, right? If we search through the code, you will see that balances is actually defined here, right? So we are saying that in here, this line is saying that we will have palette balances, and we give it a name balances. So it is in the runtime that we finally connected, saying that, okay, we will have the palette balances assigned to the associated type currencies. So that when we are, so at this line, when we are calling T : currency : transfer, we are actually doing the same thing as doing a transfer, calling a transfer from the palette balances. So that is how the connections, like how they connect together. Here. All right. It may be like a bit complicated. So it would be good if you have git clone the source code, and then after this workshop, you go through the logic again and go through like the connections there. All right. So if we go back to the slide, this is what I want to say about the flexible way. Like this is a flexible, and we will see like in what way it is flexible later. So we have, this is pretty much what I go through just now. We specify the associated currency trait bounds, and we can use a trait implementation directly. So it is the TR. It is not showing the. So it is, we are using this T : currency, and then finally we configure the associate type in the runtime. So just now we go through like what this balances is, okay, and then we also see that the balances is actually referred to the palette balances. Oh, and one more thing to show is because in the source code we actually specify that the type has to be trait bound by this currency, right? So does the palette balances already implement this currency so that it satisfies this trait? So this is another good time to go back to the Rust doc API. Let's take a look at the palette balances, and it will take a while. Okay, this is a lot faster this time. Palette balances. Okay, this is create palette balances. Oh, and Substrate by default has implemented a bunch of the default palettes that we developers could use. So palette balances is one of those, and it is used to basically handle all the balance transfer of users. So if we look through the documentations, and then you will see that implementations, the balance palette provide implementation for the following traits: currency, reservable currency, and name reservable currency, lockable currency, and imbalance. So this palette balances actually does implement currency. That's why it would satisfy these trait bounds, right? Okay. So this is the second way of doing balance transfer. Yeah. Hopefully it is not too it's not too confusing. All right. So we also check for this, the palette balances implement the currency traits. And actually there's one more interesting thing I want to show is you could actually look at the source code. You can look through the source code through the GitHub or through the source button. It will open up the actual source code. And if you search for currency, it takes a while. Okay. You would see find this line is implementing the currency for palette. So this is the actual implementations here, and it has the transfer function. Yeah, it has a transfer there. Here, yeah. Just in case, like you would wonder that how this like palette balances implement the currency trait. So you could get to here. Okay. So I just want to recap again on this. So this design. So just now I show two ways of doing a balance transfer, but actually, when we step back and look at it from a broader sense, it's actually two kind of design patterns here. One is like a tightly coupling design patterns, which you would see in the how-to guide, and then the other way, the second way that that you also see is the loosely coupling design patterns. So it is we don't specify that our palette config trait is actually type bound by a certain palette, but we just specify that the it has an associated type, and then it's type bound by a certain trait here. And then finally we make the actual connections in the construct runtime. So let's take a look at the pro and cons of tightly coupling and the loosely coupling methods. So the first way of doing balance transfer is in the tightly coupling way, so that your config trait is actually trait bounded by another palette. But the pros is that it's simpler to write and it's more direct. You understand what is like people, it's easier to understand what is going on. But the cons is that your palette is then dependent on another palettes. Like it means that in your own palette cargo.toml, you have to specify another palette there, which you may or may not want, depending on your situation. If you have a total control of the both palette, this will be fine. But if you don't, like maybe you are calling another the palette developed by other developers or other organizations, because you don't control like how it will change in the future. So at a certain point in time that it may break, right? Then the loosely coupling methods. The pros is actually it is more flexible, and you could see that it is independent of the implementations. That means that by the time when we write our palette, right, like for example the palette kitties, we do not know how the implementation of the transfer will be. We can only say that, okay, you need to define these transfer functions, passing in these arguments. But we haven't defined the implementation yet. So the implementation is up to like other people's or the runtime developer to do, to implement. And this is important for us developing Substrate, is because like when we are doing an open source projects, different people or different organizations, they are building on top of the Substrate framework. They may have different ways of doing things. So for example, transfer, maybe you could think of another way of doing handling account balance transfer. So we only saying that you have to we specify the agreement, the traits, and you have to bound by the traits, but the implementations would be up to you on how to write the implementations. And you also don't have to specify the dependency in the cargo.toml. For example, if you look at the palette kitties, you don't see like it has to like directly depend on the palette balances. Okay, so this is the pros of loose decoupling. But then the cons is you see that the setup is more complex. And if you want to learn more about this, it's almost time up. But there's a tightly coupling and loose decoupling how to guides. That's I highly recommend you to go through. And finally, again, I want to have to recommend you guys to go through the Rustdoc API if in doubt. The source code and Rustdoc API is pretty much your friends. Like although it may look intimidating, but that's the thing that's closest to the source, pretty much. Yeah. Okay. So it is time up, pretty much. It is. Yeah. But I want to showcase this stepping through your palettes. How you could step by step going through the logic of a palette. And that's it. And hopefully I can do this within 10 minutes. So please bear with me and give me 10 more minutes. If you are using VS Code, you can go to these Stack Overflow answers. It will tell you how to set up Stack Overflow. It will tell you how to set up your VS Code to do the stepping through in VS Code. But I am not using VS Code. I'm using Sublime Text myself. So I'm doing this through Rust GDB. Here. All right. So Rust GDB is a package that you could install easily if you are using Ubuntu. I think you have to find some way to do it to install it in Mac OS. But it's there should be a lot of information online. But if you are using Ubuntu, it is just sudo apt get Rust GDB, and it should be good for you. And I will try to run Rust GDB version of this node on my machine. So first, one key aspect is that usually when you compile Substrate, it is in the release mode. It is in the production mode or the release mode. Is you have the -- release flag on. But when you want to step through your code, you actually want to do it in debug mode. So you don't want to have the -- release flag on. So if you compile it without the -- release, it is in the debug mode. Afterwards, once it's done, you would run. Okay, this is the usual lines, and then I need to add Rust GDB All right, and then you see that there's some kind of error message is coming up because I have this on. I have this Polkadot.js app on, but let's go through it. So now I want to, you know what? Let me just unpin. Let me just stop it first, and then I can. So the whole line is this Rust GDB arc. So this dash arc is saying that like all the argument behind is actually passing to this executable. It's not the argument for this Rust GDB, right? Okay. Then you get to here, right? And now you can set a breakpoint. How about let's set a breakpoint at the simple transfer functions. So it is a bit like manual, so I have to type setting a breakpoint in the source code file, palettes, simple. Palette simple transfer, so it's underscore. And then the source lib.rs. Palette simple transfer source lib. Now we want to, let's put a breakpoint here, right? The first line of transfer, line 57. We specify that by a colon 57. So you see that there's a breakpoint has been set. The program hasn't run yet, right? So now we can run the program. We set a breakpoint and we start to run. You would see that this is the usual message that you would see when you run a node template. And now is a good time to also open up my Polkadot JS app. You see that this is the usual output from a node. It will take a while because of like screencasting in Crowdcast. Okay, all right. Get to here. It is connecting to the node template. Now I would do a transfer, a simple transfer, right? So I'm doing a simple transfer of transferring amount to Bob. Some amount. With the transactions, sign and submit. All right. Now you see that this line is coming up. This is like you won't see this if you are running it regularly. So this is, it actually hit the breakpoints. So it stopped here. Right. Now we want to see where do we stop actually. So in GDB we can do a layout source. So this have a very nice presentable way saying that we actually hit this line. This is the function transfer, and we are stopping at this line, just as we have in here, like line 57, right? Now in GDB, then we can also take a look at what these arguments are, like the origin, dash, amount. So what it is, we can. So there are some like commands you need to be familiar with in GDB, but they are pretty easy to catch up, and I've put the documentations in the slide. Like I put the further information in the slide. So you can see info locals arcs. So this would present the current information of the input arguments. So origin is this. You can actually see the type. So runtime origin and then you can see the dash is actually an account 32 is this. So it's a bunch of bytes. Yeah, we store a lot of things as plain bytes in Substrate, and then the amount is what I type. So it's one with a few zeros. Now we can go to next step. We go to next step. So we have the and then we do Control L again. Okay. Now we go to the next line. The next line is here. So by this point, we should have get a value of from. We can take a look at what from is. P is print out the from. Is actually, oh, this is another account. So this is a from account. And then we also have a des, the destinations, right? Then we keep going on, like we keep stepping on to the next line. You see that it is trying to like calculate the value for this variable first, and then we do a next line. Come to here. We finally come to the transfer. And if you want to step into the transfer function to see what is actually being done in the transfer function, we can use as. As is step into. But I don't want to do that right now because my time is running out. But you could do that, and then I keep on go to the next, and now it finished this line, and then come to the deposit event, right? And we can also, it come to the deposit event, and it's pretty much as expected, a minute event, and then finally return OK. So I go to N again, it's OK, and we can do a C, continue, so it will keep on running, right? So in this way, you could set a breakpoint and then go through your substrate logic line by line, and then in the middle you could also inspect the variables. So it's in this way you could debug your substrate program, and that's it. And sorry for being overtime. All right, I'm going to hand the time back to.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Jimmy, for the quick demonstration and also to cover some of the commonly asked questions. But before you kind of like go offline, just a quick question to just ask you. Where exactly can these participants at the hackathon actually be able to find the resources for them? No problem. While waiting for Jimmy to come in, I guess what I can do is just quickly cover some of the hackathon methods, and just so that everyone here, especially for those who are not registered yet, are able to to understand what the hackathon basically covers. So the hackathon basically have 3 tracks, and the only reason why today specifically we're trying to cover on the Docathon side and also the Substrate side is because there are 3 tracks that's actually available for the hackathon. One is building a blockchain using Substrate. The other one is, of course, to build toolings using Substrate as well. And last but not least, for those who are really new to being a developer, or people who are not that kind of inclined to being a developer, you can actually attend the Docathon track. Basically, it's really about writing a how-to guide or a tutorial for the Polkadot related projects as well. So these are the 3 tracks that any of the participants who have registered for the hackathon can actually look at to submit their projects for as well. Just as a quick overview on how a weekly schedule is going to be like, the weekly schedule for the event itself would really be to have a hackerspace. Basically, it's a virtual space for people to actually come in to meet your teams, to discuss your projects, or for those who are still finding members for your team, you can actually utilize this space as a networking place as well. Of course, along with it, we do have a mentor office hours where the mentors will avail themselves for 2 hours for 9 o'clock Singapore time. And you just calculate the timing on your own based on the time zone that you're at. But for these 2 hours, the mentors will actually be available to answer any of your questions with regards to your projects. If you have met with any roadblocks, you can actually have a chat with the mentors to kind of understand how you can proceed on as well. Great to bounce off ideas as well if you have any brain block in terms of what project you're really looking at. And every Friday, which is starting from this week, we actually have the technical workshops. And moving forward, we do have a few other sessions that's upcoming. And please feel free to go to the schedule of events under the participants guide to view on it. And for something extra special, we actually have a trivia night that's happening next Saturday as well. So I do see that a couple of you are actually looking to form teams, and that's great. But just to let you know some of the information that you'll need to take note of when forming teams. One is that if you go on to the free agents directory on the participant guide, you can actually select register to join an existing team if you happen to meet someone that you would like to join their team for. Basically, all you need to do is just to complete the form and click join team to complete the process, and your name should appear on the team's directory along with the team name as well. Key things that you need to take note of is that you actually need to make sure that naming is as exactly the same as what the other person has said, meaning that it's also case sensitive, and in terms of spacing, how you spell it and all are all important things that you need to take note of. Moving forward, once the team is full, the team would have to update their team profile to mention that the team is no longer looking for any members. And please take note that each team can only contain from 1 to 4 team members, while 1 meaning that you are actually deciding to hack solo. So a couple of issues may come out. One is that your team name is not reflected with the rest of the team members, likely meant that you have misspelled your team, or you may have placed different capitalizations in your team, and that's really important. I've actually faced a couple of cases before, so do take note of that. If you have issue and would like to change it, all you need to do is just to go to Teams directory and select update team name to just make sure that you have spelled the team name correctly, and you're all good to go. So introducing the mentors, Jimmy and Sacha are 2 of the 7 mentors that are readily available to meet you for the next 6.5 weeks. Basically, they're there to answer any questions that you have with regards to your projects. And for those who are working on Substrate and you have met with some errors or some issues with it, feel free to reach out to them, any of the mentors that you see over there. Also, similarly, when it comes to the Docathon part, if you're not too sure how you can continue writing, or you're not too sure if your tutorials or how-to guide is clear enough, you can always just check in with them to get a clearer direction as well. And how you can meet them, of course, first of all, is Mentors Office Hours. It's happening every Wednesday for 2 hours. There are 3 simple steps that you need to do. One is to book their time using a booking system, and to secure a time slot. And basically, this will be available in the participants guide once you're registered. And the last step is actually to meet them at the other town, which is the Hackerspace, and that's where you get to meet them based on the stipulated time slot that you have. Other methods you can is just to get connected on the Polkadot APAC Discord. Either you can mention the admin or mentor to actually reach out to them to ask any questions with regards to the hackathon, or you can just go on to the Hackathon technical channel to just ask your questions. Last but not least, you can just drop any of the mentors, the DMs, just to reach out to them as well for any help. So apart from all the resources that's available, we have the resource section on the participants guide. We also have a specially curated Polkadot pathways that is available for you to join and to take part in helping to get yourself onboarded about Polkadot, about Substrate, and to also have some practice on building that on them as well. So it's really 3 categories of the hackathon: learning and build, that you can work on. And the cool part is actually to really solve the challenges and to earn points. And the points can actually be converted into cool hackathon swag box if you happen to be the top 50. So just take note of that. And in time to come, we will be revealing how or what the swags are when you're getting. Hopefully that will kind of like get you a little bit more excited as well. So quickly to cover judging criteria, basically any build a chain and open hack are judged based on their impact and usefulness, the originality of the project, the technical complexity, and the user experience of the project itself. And this amounts to 20 points. For the Docathon, we have a slightly different judging criteria. It will be the clarity of the documentations that you have written, the examples and resources that you have linked it to, and what is the goals and use cases of the Docathon, and of course, an overview to help us understand what exactly are you trying to achieve and all. And these will amount to 30 points in that sense. So while you're working on your projects, you just need to remember some of the important artifacts that you need to have prior to submissions. For Build a Blockchain and AngelHack, basically, apart from the project title and the summary, you need to let us know which of the two categories that you are submitting your project for, create a GitHub repo link with README file, and a pitch video that tells us a little bit more about what you're building and to show a demonstration of it, most importantly, and to let us know the list of tech stack that has been used. Of course, if the project is being deployed, do provide us with the project demo link as well, so that the judges can have a look as well. For Docathon, of course, you will need to let us know the project that you are basing your documentation against, which is really important. Of course, if this project has been already launched or deployed, you will need to provide us with the project demo link as well, so that we can match up of what you've written with what of the project that you're trying to base it on. Similarly, a GitHub repo link with all your documentations that you have written. Even if your documentations are being hosted on somewhere public, you just need to make sure that all these are linked back to the GitHub repo link that you're going to submit as part of your submission. And of course, just write a project description to let us know what is your tutorial or your guide or your documentation is all about. Submission rules, the deadline is on the 12th of December, by 11:55 Singapore time. So do plan your time well. We are around 6.5 weeks away. So do make sure that you account for all the time that's needed. And please do not submit projects that's not done by you. If you are taking reference on existing project, especially for the Docathon track, do remember to give credits to the project and check the license on any public repository that you are going to use as well. Key thing that you need to do to remember is that we do have this fresh code rule that's applied for this hackathon, meaning that all your submissions has to be written during the hacking period, which is from 22nd of October to 12th December as well. Right, so just make sure that your work is original. It should not be copy and paste from somewhere and being submitted. And just make sure that it's not things that you have submitted before as well for other hackathons. So key things, how do I get started? For folks over here who have not registered for the hackathon, the number one thing is really to register for the hackathon. You can scan the QR code that you see on the screen right now to actually get you registered. And it's really important because if you happen to belong to a team who is submitting a project, the project will only be considered valid if all members are actually registered for it. So do make sure that in any case you have friends that you're trying to get along to join you in the team. Do remember that they have to they have to register. Apart from that, if you are already registered, three important things, which is to join your Discord channel, to save the hackathon calendar, and to head over Polkadot Pathways. And all these links can be found on the participants guide that will be sent to your inbox once you are registered as well. So a quick guide on how you can build a blockchain from scratch. You can actually refer to the resources that's actually provided in the participants guide. These are all comprehensive resources that has been consolidated, all thanks to Jimmy and Urban as well, who has been providing all the different resources from a beginner's point of view to someone who is intermediate and all. Of course, thank you, Jimmy, for sharing the link as well. Of course, what you can also do is actually head on to Polkadot Pathways, which have a really bite-sized challenges that you can work on to get yourself acquainted to building on Substrate very easily. All right. So 4 key people that you need to know as and when you need help. Basically, Urban, myself, Jimmy, and Harish will be available on Discord to answer any of the questions that you need. Of course, the mentors are there to answer any technical questions. And myself, Urban, and Harish will be more hackathon related as we move along as well. Right? So thank you very much and really appreciate all of you for taking time. Sorry, it kind of overran a little bit as well. But it has been great so far with around 1.5 weeks that we are around for the hackathon, and we have been seeing great engagement that's ongoing on Discord channel. Similarly, the questions that's coming in as well. So feel free to just kind of reach out to us, and Urban and I are readily available to kind of to answer that. So Urban, any last words before we kind of like end today?
I think all three of you covered everything nicely. I think we managed to address most of the questions that popped up as well. If we didn't manage to address some of your questions, please head over to the Discord channel. You can always email us, you can DM us. We're going to try to be there as quickly as possible. It's still async, so cut us some slack. But yeah, I am personally really excited. We've seen hundreds and hundreds of hackers come in. The engagement is fantastic, like you said. I've seen some really cool ideas being bounced around. So I'm looking forward to this hackathon and the submissions. I know we're 6+ weeks away, but very much looking forward to it. So thank you very much to yourself, Justin, to Sasha and Jimmy to take the time to provide us with these fantastic presentations. I think we've really covered a lot. And obviously, thank you to everybody who has showed up, who has registered. Yeah, I'm going to see you either next week or in the Discord channel.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye. Have a great weekend ahead as well.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.